Throughout this video presentation, you're going to see me wearing different clothing because I'm combining all of the days together or different times together. Let's say, for instance, earlier I was wearing a different pair of clothing. I took a shower and changed.
Edit.
I'll finish reading from American Social Welfare Policy. This concerns discrimination. This concerns poverty. This concerns the problems that exist in many neighborhoods, which there's been a lot of controversy over in the past decades. However, today it is quite clear as to why these problems exist, and there is no one that can test it and edit, and there is no one that can contest the facts. Crime is another indicator of from the American Social Welfare Policy. Continued. Crime is another indicator of economic and social distress. Although African Americans constitute slightly more than 12% of the population, they account for 30% of all arrests and 51% of all violent crime arrests. However, they are 8.5 times more likely than whites to go to prison. Harvard economist Richard Freeman calculated that 35% of all African Americans aged 16 to 35 were arrested in 1989. In 1986, almost 47% of the inmates in state prisons were African American, 4 times their numerical representation in the population. Welfare bureaucrats. Welfare bureaucrats are public functionaries who maintain the welfare state in much the same form in which it was conceived during the New Deal. Their ideology, according to Robert Alford, stresses a rational, efficient, cost-conscious, coordinated delivery system. They view government intervention, classifies social problems as legitimate and necessary, considering the apparent lack of concern by the private sector and local government. Moreover, they contended that government intervention is more effective because authority is centralized, guidelines are standardized, and benefits are allocated according to principles of equity and equality. Policy framework. The historical Policy framework. The historical background of the policy. Understanding the historical Policy framework. The historical background of the policy. Understanding the historical antecedents of a All well-designed policy frameworks are characterized by 8 key elements. Policy frameworks attempt to analyze a social policy or program systematically. Second, policy frameworks reflect an understanding that social policy is not created in a vacuum, but is, rather, context-sensitive, and that policy options usually contain a set of competing priorities. Third, policy frameworks employ rational methods of inquiry and analysis. The evidence used for analysis of a policy is derived by edit. Third, policy frameworks employ rational methods of inquiry and analysis. The evidence used for edit. The evidence used for analysis of a policy is derived from scientific inquiry, and all data must be collected from reliable and legitimate sources. Furthermore, the data should be interpreted and analyzed as objectively as possible. Fourth, although open to interpretation, the analytic method is implicit, and all succeeding analysts should be able to approximate the same conclusion. Fifth, the objectives of policy analysts reflect a commitment to deriving the largest possible social benefit at the least possible social cost. Thus, a good social policy is one that benefits at least one person, as the person perceives his or her own best self-interest, while at the same time hurting no one. In the real world of finite resources and of Thus, a good social policy is one that benefits at least one person, as the person perceives his or her own best self-interest, while at the same time hurting no one. In the real world of finite resources and of proliferating claims upon them, that goal is rarely achieved. Nevertheless, analysts should strive to realize that aim. Sixth, policy frameworks should take into account the unintended consequences of a particular policy or program. Seventh, policy frameworks examine a particular policy in the context of alternatives, that is, alternative social policies or alternative uses of the resources allocated to a given policy. Eighth, policy frameworks examine the potential impact of a policy or series of policies on the other social policies. Eighth, policy frameworks examine the potential impact of a policy or series of policies on the other social policies, social problems, and the public. In the end, the analyst of social policy, often through utilizing a policy framework, provides decision makers and the general public with information and understanding of the possible ramifications of the policy on the target problem, as well as on other problems and policies, and a series of alternative policies that could be more effective in dealing with the problem. Untoward costs and injuries are more likely to result when a systematic framework of Untoward costs and injuries are more likely to result when a systematic framework for policy analysis is not used. History is replete with examples of well-intentioned policies that proved to be catastrophic. For example, the prohibition of manufacture, sale, or transport alcohol was enacted by the United States Congress in 1919 in order to cut down on crime. Familial instability, unemployment, and other social For example, the prohibition to manufacture, sell, or transport alcohol. For example, the prohibition to manufacture, sell, or transport alcohol was enacted by the United States Congress in 1919 in order to cut down on crime. Familial For example, the prohibition to manufacture, sell, or transport, edit. For example, the prohibition to manufacture, sell, or transport alcohol was enacted by the United States Congress in 1919 in order to cut down on crime, familial instability, unemployment, and many other social problems. Proponents of prohibition, including many social workers, touted the end of alcohol as a major step forward in the social evolution of the United States. However, when prohibition was repealed 13 years later in 1932, most of the original supporters did not vigorously argue for its continuance. Despite the hopes of its backers, prohibition did not decrease crime and familial instability or encourage social order. Instead, prohibition encouraged the growth of an organized crime industry that fed the ongoing taste of Americans for alcohol. Instead of eliminating an alcohol-related nightlife, prohibition fostered the growth of illegal but well-attended speakeasies. Even many supporters concluded that alcohol was almost as abundant as before prohibition. Had a systematic policy analysis of prohibition been undertaken, good policy analysts might have demonstrated the futility of the measure. A similar argument can be made for the current policy of drug interdiction and enforcement. After almost a century of vigorous drug enforcement, heroin, cocaine, and other drugs continue to be After almost a century of vigorously drug enforcement, heroin, cocaine, and other drugs continue. After almost a century of vigorous drug enforcement, heroin, cocaine, and other drugs continue to be readily available. The latest round of drug enforcement, which began in the 1980s, did not result in less drug use, but in a doubling of the prison population from 1980 to 1996. More than 1 million are now incarcerated. It also resulted in the added public expense of new prison construction, as opposite to new school construction, the creation of drug cartels whose wealth and power rival that of many national governments and multinational corporations, a dramatic increase in the homicide rate associated with drugs, and the deterioration of inner-city neighborhoods racked by a gang warfare rooted in a lucrative drug culture. Moreover, while drug enforcement policies have not led to the diminished use of drugs, they have resulted in the creation of a drug industry. That includes governmental officials, contractors, private correctional corporations, police departments, and large parts of the legal and judicial system. Instead of curbing drugs, these groups have vested interest in maintaining a status quo drug policy, regardless of its efficiency. In short, a social program has led to a social policy, which in turn has led to a powerful industry that depends for its very existence on the continuation of an ineffective policy. In that sense, social policy is often driven by politics and is rarely, if ever, systematically analyzed. Policy analysis often occurs only after a bill or policy is enacted, and analysts are occasionally asked to perform an autopsy to determine why a specific bill or policy failed. The purpose of a policy framework is to provide the analyst with a model, a set of questions, for systematically analyzing a policy. As such, the choice of the framework must fit the requirement of the project as well as those of the analyst. Every existing policy framework can either be fine-tuned or substantially modified. In fact, the best policy framework may result from a synthesis of existing models. In short, a policy framework is simply a set of questions that is systematically asked of a past, present, or future policy to determine its desirability. Okay. crime-fighting measures would be to give people jobs, give people opportunity, restore hope, give them their freedom and liberty that all American people here in this country deserve. Here in California, the legislators have written laws like the three strikes laws as ways to deter crime, which actually creates more violent criminals. They have written these laws with loopholes in them. This three strikes law was intended for persons who were violent offenders only. However, today, as the California taxpayers' dollars are being wasted, there are people such as Renee Landa, who is locked up, incarcerated for 25 years to life for stealing a spare tire, or Kiefer Reynolds for petty theft, Johnny Quirino, petty theft of razor blades, package of razor blades. How much do you have to pay for a package of razor blades? I can go to the Dollar Tree. This is a store where you only have to pay $1 to buy a package of razor blades. So you have to be pretty poor to steal something such as a package of razor blades. And most of these poor people are those that do not get proper representation in court today. And that is a major issue to many of these people here in America, which causes many problems. They'll send you to war to fight for freedom, but here in America, they do not honor the freedom of all citizens. Now, these rap artists are from all over the world. Problems do not only exist here in California, in such neighborhoods such as South Central Los Angeles, Watts, Compton area, bordering Long Beach, gang violence in Sacramento County. That's further north from Los Angeles, Central California. And where I reside here is Chico, California, where I see the crime rate, have seen the crime rate over the past decade increase, as they are doing here in this county what they do in other counties. There are a lot of politics behind what goes on inside of this country, especially in this particular state that I reside in. And I've been studying this situation for a great deal of time. Let me just proceed forward with what the testimonies are coming from these rappers. Now, these problems do not only exist with the minorities, but it has gotten so bad that Caucasians are suffering just as well. Anybody that does not have money to buy proper legal defense will then face this injustice system, as I have given it the name, and these people are incarcerated, and the recidivism rate is high. It is a vicious cycle. And there are many people today that are incarcerated or they are on parole or probation. Stats from the Justice Department Bureau. At the end of 2001, 83.1% of the United States population was on some type of correctional status, representing 1 in every 32 adult American residents. Prison population, 1,330,980 people were locked up. In jails, 631,240 people were incarcerated. On parole, 731,147 people. On probation, 3,932,751 people, totaling in the correctional facility, as well as being on probation or parole, 6,626,118 people. This is their crime-fighting strategy. Lock people up, get them on probation or parole, and what I've found is that it increases the problems here in America. They have found that they can build economies on this type of crime-fighting strategy, but the ones who benefit the most are the politicians. We have problems with overcrowding. We have problems with rehabilitation. There needs to be reform. These are social ills here in America, and many people are not being treated as the politicians want people to believe they are. This is a waste of tax dollars, and I am very concerned regarding these matters, due that the problems have only increased. They are not solving America's problems, they are increasing those problems. Today, there's more violence on the street than there was 10 years ago. It has a lot to do with these laws that they write. As I study those laws and their effects on society, and what they say about legal representation here in America. I'll proceed forward with the testimonies in this rap, which they were attempting to disclose what takes place in their environment, which many of us do not know. Therefore, it needs to be addressed, and that's my job, addressing the issues.
Silence! Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, you are totally fucked. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, you are totally fucked. You will be appointed one that has no legal standing within the community. You will find a pawn to the legal system.
Now, one thing you'll have to excuse is the curse words inside of this music, as we all know. And much of this rap music, there are curse words, and these people are very angry about their treatment here in America, so I can understand why they curse so much. But it's not the point that they curse so much. However, the point is their treatment here in America. If we want these problems to go away, or at least reduce them dramatically, we have to deal with the situation appropriately. Pay mind to the messages, not the cuss words. Overlook the curse words.
Man, the block got pussy. We grind every day out here. This life. Value of a dollar get this. What type of medicine they got for this stress? Yeah, they send you the war for continuing cause. They kill you for defending your life. What good it make you try to fight for your rights? We be dying just trying to live better. Good Lord, what it's gonna take to get better?
I don't know, but I'll tell you this. From the will to the tomb, we presume is guilty. Excluded quickly and removed from history. Teaching us about making freedoms, but never told us what my people had established where they came and stole us. Rolled us on the boat, shackled under the deck. And built us up another country off of African sweat. And I said, man, my neck and keep a foot on my neck. They get Pop, Biggie, more and then back from X. I stay watching how you plot not to let us win. Cause being big, building kids, you can set us in. Let answer get in the rocks and get a mess up in the block. 7 blocks of lights and hot. Shots and curves, murders, pop. Block everything. They call the immigration truck. Kill 2 birds with 1 truck and not a face thing once. Up cause they want us all planning to go. And get mines cause it's more time for planning to go.
Man, the block got pussy. We grind every day out here. This life. Value of a dollar get this. What type of medicine they got for this stress? Yeah, they send you the war for continuing cause. They kill you for defending your life. What good it make you try to fight for your rights? We be dying just trying to live better. Good Lord, what it's gonna take to get better?
They turn them right back on our Jesus and tell us pledge allegiance, infect us with diseases. Recipe they feed us, teaching us the history of dirty shit. They to be and guarantee a PhD and truly stands for free. But use computers just to lose us in the news. Creating more confusion just to take the place of humans. Assuming we just stupid when the truth is in the music. Just review what you was feeding, filming movies, adding flavor to the state of entertainment, getting famous while you hating ways, taking Satan, taking us to Hades. Stop watching, listen, this intention, this is 50 simple. We just 50 get some sense into this verbal scripture. Ain't no way to circumvent the purpose that's been written, and we'll never know the end and know exactly what we're spinning. Spinning in the cycle with survival of the fittest. Whole time we're trying to make this is only the beginning.
The block got pussy. We grind every day out here. This life. Value of a dollar get this. What type of medicine they got for this stress? Yeah, they send you the war for continuing cause. They kill you for defending your life. What good it make you try to fight for your rights? We be dying just trying to live better. Good Lord, what it's gonna take to get better?
Concerning these issues regarding the criminal justice system, the way of dealing with these crime issues is a failed policy. Therefore, we need policy reform in government. I'm very concerned about our children and the way that they are affected by what goes on. And many of these children become problem children. They have problems that are misunderstood, and the way that, say, this state that I reside in handles these kids is inappropriate. We need change here in America. We need change in many policies, like I said, concerning the war on drugs, concerning incarceration, to our young. And I'll read this article from Reader's Digest. 14 years ago, in a bold experiment, Massachusetts began closing its reform schools and placing all but its most dangerous delinquents in privately run, community-based programs. The result, cost and crime went down. California locks up more young criminals per 100,000 of its youth population than any other state. Massachusetts locks up the least. And which state has youth crime tumbled? If you picked California, you were wrong. Massachusetts juvenile crime has fallen 26% since 1978. California is only 12% repeaters. In California, 1 out of every 4 felons entering state prison in 1982 was an ex-delinquent. In Massachusetts, it was 1 out of every 7. The 2 states are at the opposite poles in dealing with crime by the young. California sends its bad kids to reform schools, which overflow with 30% of the entire country's incarcerated youth. Among inmates ages 14 to 21 are rapists, arsonists, murderers. The delinquent life in prison. Reading to a camera. Maybe I'll just pretend I'm not reading to a camera. Among inmates ages 14 to 21 are rapists, arsonists, murderers. The delinquent's life is prison life. His schooling, the art of prison survival. Massachusetts has shut down its reform schools. Alone of all states, it relies primarily on community-based treatment to reduce youth crime. Massachusetts can teach the rest of the country how to get more for correctional dollars, how to substitute humane, effective treatment for all too frequent. Good morning. This is Richard McClellan. Today's date is August the 12th, 2004. They got me going to court tomorrow. And of course, you know, there's corruption behind what's going on here in Butte County in 1999. Christmas of 1999, I reported a crime to the Paradise Police. Then after that, they came after me. They were trying to cover up these documents that I have here, trying to get the documents from me. They chased me down. I was kidnapped, taken to the hospital where they had one of their Dr. Bowers up there in Paradise. Put a sedative in me. I woke up, I was in Butte Mental Health. They were probably hoping that I would get written off as some kind of a nutball or something. So anyway, they tried to cover up these documents. They were unsuccessful. They coerced this girl, Sarah Blackadder, that was involved with these people to say that I harmed her in some way. Sarah Blackadder was doing all kinds of stuff with these people that were dropping the date rape drug into my drink. I was raped, been assaulted. This guy crept up behind me with a knife who I thought was my friend. He lived next door. I jabbed him in his gut and then kicked him back in his chest. He flew back. He was in my house when nobody else was here. I came home from work one day and the guy crept up behind me. Anyways, I had this insurance card from Montgomery Ward that said $250,000 on it. They assumed that they were going to collect on some insurance.